Hello and welcome into Sports Talk on a Budget. It is Wednesday, October 30th, year of our Lord 2024. Almost through the month of October. We got Halloween tomorrow. Year is going by quick. Only 2 months left of the year. 2024 has been a crazy quick year, but pretty good year. Had some really good topics, really good sports events, really good things to talk about here on this show. Sports Talk on a Budget, like I said. If you like the video version, please like and subscribe right down here. Leave a comment. I love to see some of the comments that I've been getting lately. Leave a comment on the show, but please like and subscribe to the show if you enjoy what you're seeing here. If you don't, whatever, that's fine. But please like and subscribe if you do like what you're seeing on the podcast or on the YouTube video here. And then if you prefer the audio version, please go to places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or pretty much wherever you like to get your podcast. Like and subscribe on there as well. But with that being said, like I said, we're at the end of October, so that means we're pretty much at the halfway point and past the halfway point in football, both in college and the NFL. So let's go ahead and look at what our topics are going to be. So we're pretty much at the halfway point right now of the NFL season. So at kind of the 1/3 point of the NFL season, I gave you my power rankings, top 10 teams in the NFL. I'm going to do that again here now that we're at the halfway point pretty much of the NFL season. I'll give you my I'll give you my kind of like 3/4 power rankings in about 3 to 4 weeks, and then I'll give you the power rankings before the playoffs start as well. But here's our halfway point NFL power rankings. That is going to be my first topic of the day. Second topic, we're going to move to college football, and I want to talk about 3 teams that are really impressing and surprising this year, and that is Texas A&M, BYU, and Indiana. Go over just what they've been doing on the field and how impressive I believe it's been, how the coaches are doing there, how the team is playing, and look ahead at their schedule. And obviously, they're alive in their respective conferences, and they're still alive in the college football playoffs. So break that down a little bit as well. And not a bunch of topics today. Then we will end the show like I always do. It'll be my week 10. Yes, week 10. We're already in week 10, which kind of makes me a little sad. But week 10 college football picks and week 9 NFL picks. Season is going by super quick. I love both college football and the NFL, and it makes me a little sad when we get close to the end of the season, but new playoff in college football is going to make it really exciting. And then, of course, the NFL is always exciting in November, December, and January, and even in that second week of February as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the show. Look at my first topic. We're going to start with my NFL power rankings, and I give you my top 10 teams in the NFL right now. Let's start at number 1, and I don't really think there's much argument at number 1, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the only undefeated team left in the league. They're 7-0. And yes, they're not dominant on the offensive side, but they make plays when they need to. They make plays in big moments. But what I want to talk about with this Kansas City Chiefs team is their defense. Their defense has been awesome. The statistics might not be perfect there, but they're top 10 in most statistical categories. Their defensive front with guys like Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, really good on the front, really good both at getting after the passer and in the run game as well. And then the back end of their defense, you got Trent McDuffie, who is an all-pro, one of the best corners in the league. You got other guys roaming in the back there as well. In the middle, you got Nick Bolton at linebacker. He's really good as well. Obviously, Steve Spagnuolo is the defensive coordinator there. He's doing a really good job and has been a really good defensive coordinator for a very long time in the NFL. That's how this team is winning games. They're playing really stout defense. And then on the offensive side, when the game comes down to it, when it gets close in the fourth quarter, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid in that offense makes the right plays they need, gets in the end zone or gets in field goal range and wins the football game. So they're just a clean team. They remind me a lot of kind of the early New England Patriots with Tom Brady, where Tom Brady was kind of coming into his own. Now, obviously, Patrick Mahomes is not coming into his own. But what reminds me of them is those Patriot teams won with defense and timely play on the offensive side, and that is exactly how this Kansas City Chiefs team is doing, and that's why I got them number 1 in the power rankings. At number 2, and this one was an easy decision for me as well, that is the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, if they hadn't lost that game at home early in the season, I think it was in week 2, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they may be number 1 if they were still undefeated, but they're not. They have a loss. I can't have them at number 1 when Kansas City is sitting there as the defending 2-time Super Bowl champions and is undefeated. But let's get to the Detroit Lions. Detroit is very, very complete team. They can run the ball well with 2 great backs in Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Their offensive line is the best in the league, and it's really not even close. They're one of the best in the last decade, in my opinion. So they can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Jared Goff is having an MVP-like season. Now, they're without Jamison Williams for another week, but you still have a stud as like a Amon-Ra St. Brown and wide receiver. Sam Laporta has been back and healthy, been playing better. Their defense is getting better. Now, the loss of Aiden Hutchinson is definitely going to hurt, and I think they need to make a move here at the end of the trade deadline to get someone that's going to help in pass rush help, like a Zadarius Smith or something like that. But their back end's getting better. Brian Branch is playing really well. Their young corners are playing really well. Carlton Davis that they got from Tampa Bay is playing better. So they're getting better on the defensive end, and their offense is just unstoppable at all levels. So that's why I like the Detroit Lions as my number 2 team in the power rankings. And number 3, this might be a little bit of a controversial number 3, but I have the Buffalo Bills. Now, I know Buffalo has lost a couple of games. They lost on the road at Houston, and they lost on the road at Baltimore. But what I've seen from them in the last couple of weeks, yes, they kind of started out slow against Tennessee 2 weeks ago and came back and hammered them. But going on the road last week to Seattle and absolutely hammering Seattle in Seattle, so that's a cross-country travel, one of the farthest travels you can do in the NFL, Buffalo to Seattle. They are getting better and better each week. Josh Allen, and we're in week 9 here. Josh Allen still only has 1 interception, and he just threw it this past week. And that's Josh Allen, and he's a great player, but he's also turnover prone. Has not been that this year. You add Amari Cooper, who's just going to get better and better, but had a pretty good game 1. Didn't really do much in game 2 for Buffalo, but had a good game 1. Keon Coleman's coming on. Khalil Shakir's back and healthy. Dalton Kincaid is having a really good season. They're really good last couple of weeks. James Cook is running the ball well. Their defense is always going to play pretty stout defense under Sean McDermott. That's something that they really don't have to worry about too much, even though they lost a lot of pieces in the offseason. This team, I think they're just a team that you can kind of always count on being in the playoffs and being there towards the end. And now with the kind of the debacle of the Jets and the Dolphins in the division, they may end up sealing up this division in the next 3 to 4 weeks. It may be a wrap by the time we get around to like week 12, week 13. So the Buffalo Bills are my 3rd overall team in my power rankings. Let me go to number 4, and we'll go back to the NFC, and we'll actually go back to the NFC North as well. And I have the Green Bay Packers. The reason I have the Green Bay at number 4 is Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur, in my opinion, right now today, is the coach of the year in the NFL because of what he did in those 2 weeks that he did not have Jordan Love. He had Malik Willis, who was left for dead by Tennessee, and he ends up winning 2 games, 1 on the road, 1 at home. In those, 1 against Tennessee as well. So Tennessee, Malik Willis got a little bit of revenge. Great job there. Malik Willis was a guy that most people thought couldn't really play quarterback in the league and was probably left for dead, like I said, by Tennessee. He puts him in the offense, puts an offense around him and his strengths and really kind of builds it there. So he's been a really good coach, and they've had a really good season so far. And they're young pieces. I mean, if you just look at their wide receivers, whether it's Dobbs, Watson, Reed, Dontavius Wicks, you got the 2 tight ends in, I can't think of their names right now, but you got the 2 tight ends in Musgrave, and I can't remember the other one. You got Josh Jacobs in the backfield. And their defense is actually playing very well this year. They're getting better. They're young all the way around. And if Jordan Love can stay healthy and kind of cut down on the risky plays and turnovers, they're going to be a really tough out for a lot of teams. So that's why I have the Packers as the number 4 overall team in my power rankings. At number 5, we're going to stay in the NFC, and we're going to go over to the NFC East. And I have the Washington Commanders at number 5. The reason I have the Commanders, listen, they're a 6-2 football team. They're a very, very good football team. And you know what they're going to do on offense. Jaden Daniels is right now the Rookie of the Year. He won that matchup and was better in that game against Caleb Williams. So right now he is for sure the Rookie of the Year. They're running the ball well with Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler. You still have McLaurin on the outside, who's a really good wide receiver. Ertz up the middle, who's really good as well. But their defense has gotten better and better each week. And that's what I think has really kind of separated this team. Early on, they were winning shootouts when they were winning games. Now they're playing in closer, lower scoring games and still getting victories. If their defense can continue to improve to go along with that offense and what Jaden Daniels and that offense offers, this is going to be a very scary team. So give me the Commanders as my number 5 team in my power rankings. At number 6, we're going to go back to the AFC and go to the AFC North, and I have the Baltimore Ravens. Now, just an inexcusable loss, and they've had 2 inexcusable losses this year. Week 2 at home to the Las Vegas Raiders, and last week on the road to the Cleveland Browns. And the thing that worries me about this Baltimore Ravens team is the defense, and I thought I would never say that about a Baltimore Ravens team, is that their defense scares me. But their defense is not good right now. They don't get after the pass. They don't get after the quarterback on a consistent basis, and people are throwing all over the field on this Ravens defense. Jameis Winston had over 300 yards in his first starting game in like years, or in at least over a year at this point last week. He tore them up. They've been torn up by everybody, every quarterback that they basically played. So that is a concern. What I like about this team is the offense. Lamar Jackson is playing at an MVP type level. Derrick Henry is also playing at an MVP type level. You have guys like Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman's having a really good season. Mark Andrews is having a resurgence. Isaiah Likely, and now you trade for a guy like Deontay Johnson. Their offense is going to be stout, and it's going to be hard to stop. And there's so many different guys that he can get the ball and distribute it to. And then obviously you have to worry about Lamar Jackson's legs. So their offense is always going to keep them in games with the weapons that they have. At wide receiver and tight end and running back, and then, of course, with Lamar Jackson. The defense needs to get better, or this team will not reach its ultimate goal, and that is a Super Bowl if the defense does not improve. But I will keep the Baltimore Ravens in my top 10 at the number 6 position in my power rankings. At number 7, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. And don't look now, the Eagles are coming. Ever since they got back A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts has been much better. The whole offense has been running much better. And speaking of running, Saquon Barkley has been running all over teams all year. He is kind of maybe like a dark horse MVP candidate at this point. He's playing really well. The defense is playing better. Not great, but the defense is playing serviceable at this point. But their offense has looked really good with the two-headed monster they have at wide receiver in Brown and Smith with Saquon Barkley. And Jalen Hurts is really he's playing his best ball since he's played since the 2022 season where they went to the Super Bowl. So this Philadelphia Eagles team looks really good, and I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup between them and the Commanders for this division in the NFC East. But Philadelphia is coming on, and they're playing a lot better, and that's why I have them at my number 7 spot in the power rankings. At number 8, we're going to stay in the NFC, and we're going to go back to the NFC North. So my third NFC North team so far in this rankings, and I have the Minnesota Vikings. The reason I have the Minnesota Vikings is, listen, they were 5-0. I know they lost their last 2 games. They lost one at home to Detroit, who has my number 2 team in the power rankings. And then they lost on the road last week against the Rams team, who I think is coming on. The Rams won't be featured in this top 10, but I think the Rams are coming on, are a team to worry about and watch out for as the season goes on. But why I like this Vikings team is Sam Darnold is having his best year by far and having a resurgence at the quarterback position. You can run the ball with Aaron Jones. You have just weapons galore on the outside, whether it's Justin Jefferson, who's, my opinion, is the best wide receiver in the league. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson is coming back this week, so that'll really help. And then their defense. Their defense is playing much better this year. And Brian Flores is probably one of the best defensive coordinators that no one likes to talk about that much. They're playing much better on the defensive end this year. A reason for concern is the injury to their left tackle, Darisaw. He is going to be out for the year. Now, they did trade for a left tackle earlier this week, but you cannot lose your left tackle in this league. You can't lose your left tackle in a modern-day NFL. You need to be able to protect Sam Darnold. He can even be pulled down by his face mask, and apparently that doesn't matter, but that's a conversation for another day. But at my number 8 team is the Minnesota Vikings. I still like a lot of what they're doing, even though they've had 2 losses in the last 2 weeks. At the number 9 spot, we'll move back to the AFC, and we'll move back to the AFC North as well. And I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin, I don't know how he does it. He is just in and year out, he gets the most out of his football team. This is a 6-2 football team. And I did not think that was going to be the case. I thought this was going to be the first year that Mike Tomlin would finish under 500. He only needs 3 more wins to get above 500. And let me just kind of end the suspense for you. He's going to get 3 more wins at least. And I love that he has built a culture now. When you're the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, there's already kind of like a culture there. There's already a culture set in place, and he's continued that. They've only had 3 coaches since the 60s in that for that franchise. He's done a really good job there. Russell Wilson has come in. I didn't think they should have went in him. I thought they should have stayed with Justin Fields, but they look like geniuses because Russell Wilson has played really well the last 2 games. Of course, the defense is going to be great. Defensive player of the year, in my opinion, right now is TJ Watt, and I don't even think it's close. So TJ Watt's your defensive player of the year right now. They're running the ball really well with Najee Harris, and now that Wilson has been inserted, George Pickens has had a good couple of weeks. These last 2 weeks, Fields wasn't getting the ball on a consistent basis. Wilson can do that, has a better arm and a better downfield throw. So this is a team to watch out for. I do believe there's kind of a ceiling to this team. I don't know if they're a Super Bowl contending team, but with Mike Tomlin as your coach, you know you're going to play good defense. You know you're going to play sound football. And if Russell Wilson can continue this play, I'm not sure if he can, but if he can, they're going to be a hard team and a hard outs because of how hard they play and just how sound football they play. And then we'll go ahead and round out my top 10 power rankings in the NFL, and we'll stay in the AFC, and we're going to go to the AFC South, and we're going to go to the Houston Texans. Now, the Houston Texans are a team that is banged up. They just lost Stephon Diggs for the year. Nico Collins is still out due to injury. They got back Joe Mixon a couple weeks ago. But what I really like about this Texans team, they're playing great on defense. They have that two-headed monster, those bookend defensive ends in Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. Those guys have been playing really well. They're good on the back ends with some of their defensive, with some of their secondaries. They're really good on the back end. But they get after the quarterback and they make the quarterback's life hell. Just asked Drake May 2 weeks ago. Just asked Trevor Lawrence earlier in the season. Josh Allen earlier in the season, they wreaked havoc on him as well. So this is just a really good defensive football team, and they still have good offensive pieces. You still have C.J. Stroud, even though he's having a little bit of a sophomore slump this year. You still have guys like Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon that they're going to have to lean on. I'd like to see them make a move for a wide receiver before the trade deadline ends, but if they don't, I still think they're a good enough team. I think they'll for sure win the AFC South division, and they'll be in the playoffs, and they'll still be a tough out, especially if they can get Nico Collins back in the fold as well. So that has been my top 10 power rankings. Let me just go ahead and recap that for you. I have the Chiefs at 1, the Lions at 2, the Bills at 3, the Packers at 4, the Commanders at 5, the Ravens at 6, Eagles at 7, Vikings at 8, Steelers at 9, and to round it out at the top 10 position, I have the Houston Texans at 10. Those are my power rankings. Love to see your power rankings or maybe some comments in the comments section of where you think I may have gone wrong or who you think might be in the top 10. Did not have the 49ers. They've kind of sputtered too much this year. Did not have the Rams, although I think they're coming on some other teams as well. But that is my top 10 power rankings. And let's go ahead and move to my college football topics. And that is going to be my second topic of the day. And there's 3 teams I wanted to talk about in college football. And I mentioned that in the opening. And that is Texas A&M, BYU, and Indiana. And all 3 of these teams, so we have Texas A&M who's sitting there with just 1 loss overall, and that was to Notre Dame in the beginning of the season. They're 7-1 on the season, 5-0 in the SEC, coming off a huge victory Saturday night against LSU, and they're in the driver's seat to get to the SEC championship game. And I think if they're playing in the SEC championship game, they'll be in the playoff. But what I really like about this team is new head coach there, Mike Elko, has really developed the culture that they were looking for and thought they would get out of Jimbo Fisher. Mike Elko is a no-nonsense guy. He's not a politician, like he said in his post-interview. He's not a guy that's going to be a rah-rah guy. He's a no-nonsense guy that just expects excellence, and that's what he's gotten out of this team. Their defense is playing really well. They're running the football well. I think they need to go with Marcel Reed instead of Connor Wegman at the quarterback position. I think Marcel Reed just gives them more consistency where Wegman's been up and down all year. So I think that'll really help their team in that way. But I just really like what I'm seeing from this program at A&M. They're playing sound football. They're playing disciplined football. And it's not all flash. It's not all pizzazz. They're playing along the lines of scrimmage as well. And that's really what travels in today's college football. So I like Texas A&M. Now, it's not going to be easy for Texas A&M down the stretch. They go on the road to South Carolina this week. Not an easy place to play, so that could be kind of a trap situation coming off a big win against LSU at home. Then they get New Mexico State at home. That should be an easy win. Auburn comes to them. That could be tricky. Auburn, I was actually they go to Auburn, so that could be a little bit tricky. Although everybody says Auburn's a tough place to play, but all I do is see Auburn lose home games, even including to New Mexico State last year. So, I don't know how tough of a place to play it really is. I've never actually been there before, so I don't know. So that could be tricky a little bit. And then the big one at the end of the year, hosting Texas at the end of the year. That is going to be huge. Can't wait for that game. Haven't seen that game in over a decade now, and that was a huge rivalry in the Big 12 and the Southwest Conference in the past. So that'll be a huge game, and that'll be really telling. But like I said, A&M's in the driver's seat. If they win against South Carolina and Texas, actually, I think they have Florida in there. I think Florida comes to them as well. If they can win just 2 more SEC games, they almost give themselves a guaranteed berth in the SEC championship game. But still, really like this direction of this Texas A&M team. Right now, they're sitting in the top 10 in the AP poll. Doesn't really matter. We'll see what happens with the college football poll next week. That's the one that really matters as far as getting into the college football playoff, of course. But really like the direction of this program and this team under Mike Elko, and really like what he's doing there. Next team I wanted to talk about is here in Utah, like I am, and that is the BYU Cougars. And they are sitting at 8-0 after just a number of impressive victories. They hammered Kansas State at home earlier in the season. They went on the road and beat an SMU team who is currently ranked 20th and is undefeated in their conference in the ACC. So that looks like a good win that just keeps on getting better and better. Jake Ratzlaff, their quarterback, he's not a flashy guy. He's not going to make he's not going to make big explosive plays, but he's a consistent, tough player that is going to give his team every ounce of heat that they are looking for. But what's really winning for this BYU team is the defense. The defense has been opportunistic with forcing turnovers, but the defense has also just been a very stout defense, both in the run game and the pass game. Very stout team overall with this BYU team, very disciplined, buttoned up team. That's what I really like about this team. And like I said, good wins already on the season. You got an out-of-conference win against SMU. That's looking better and better each week. That home win when they absolutely hammered Kansas State, that's looking better and better each week. And they are undefeated in the conference, just like Iowa State. So they are in the driver's seat to get to the Big 12 championship. And if you get to the Big 12 championship, you're 60 minutes away from getting to the college football playoff. And if they can get in there undefeated, they should automatically be in the college football playoff. But really like the direction. Kalani Sitake, their coach there, was a guy that most people, at least around here, the BYU fans and people I've talked to, didn't really believe he could be a guy that could lead the BYU program to a season like this, but maybe we were all wrong, and maybe he is that guy. Having a really good season is probably the runaway winner for at least Big 12 Coach of the Year. But really like what this BYU team is doing. Down the stretch, I think they got a ton of winnable games. You got Utah, obviously the Holy War, which is next weekend. Utah is not the team that we thought they would be, not even close to that. So BYU can definitely go into Utah. Obviously, the travel situation is nothing. It's basically like a 30, 45-minute drive from Provo to Salt Lake City. So that shouldn't be an issue. Kansas on the road, not exactly a tough place to play. So actually, no, I think Kansas comes to Provo. So I think that could be an easy victory there, although Kansas is a sneaky good team, but is really disappointed this year. They go to Arizona State. I think that's the toughest game left on their schedule. Arizona State is a pretty darn good team under Kenny Dillingham. They're getting better each week, and their running back Cameron Scadaboo is a really tough guy to game plan for. So I think that's the toughest matchup. They end with Houston. I think they can get that victory. But BYU is in the driver's seat in the Big 12 Conference, and I really like the direction of this team. They're off this weekend, and then they have the big one against Utah next week. But I think they definitely could beat Utah, and I think that game can get a little ugly because Utah has zero offense right now. Last team I wanted to talk about is the Indiana Hoosiers. And the Indiana Hoosiers moved to 8-0 after a victory at home against the Washington Huskies. Indiana, Curt Cignetti in his first year, they play sound football as well. They were missing their quarterback last week, and Curtis Rorick. Didn't matter. They were still able to be opportunistic on the defensive side and get a pick six early on in the game, place that on the defensive side, run the ball really well on the offensive side, and get that victory. 2 weeks ago, they absolutely hammered the Nebraska Cornhuskers, so that was a huge win as well because we saw what Nebraska did the following week against Ohio State. So Indiana, yes, their schedule hasn't been the toughest, but this is Indiana. This isn't Ohio State. This isn't Michigan. This is Indiana. So really good job by Curt Cignetti there. I like the way they run the ball. Curtis Rourke should be back for them in the lineup here. Either I think they're off this weekend. Next week, no, they're on the road at Michigan State. So I think he's supposed to be back in the lineup this week. That'll really help. Their offense does move a lot better with him at quarterback instead of the backup. But still, they run the ball well. They have decent wide receiver talent, and they play really good, sound defense. Kurt Cignetti brought a lot of guys over from JMU that are playing really well, a lot of other transfers that are playing really well. He has already built a culture there in Indiana that they've probably never really had in their history, maybe outside of the Lee Corso years. Even then, there was only a couple of good years there. But either way, love what this Indiana team is doing. 8-0. They go to Michigan State this week. They get Michigan at home. They go to Ohio State, I believe, but they finish out Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, and Purdue. And they're also in a good spot as well. But the only tough thing in the Big Ten is Oregon and Penn State are still undefeated. So they're not exactly in the driver's seat to get to the Big Ten championship if those teams continue to win like they do. But I know this is crazy to say, but every game remaining on Indiana's schedule, they can win. And I know that includes Ohio State. I know that includes Michigan. They can beat those teams with the way they're playing football right now. And those are going to be tough games for both of those schools, especially Michigan, who's kind of down this year. But Indiana can win any game left on their schedule. They may not be favored in the rest of the games on their schedule, but they can win any game left on their schedule. They're having a really good season. Kurt Cignetti is probably the coach of the year in college football and definitely the coach of the year in the Big Ten. So just wanted to kind of highlight those three teams. I really like what the coaches and the players are doing there. So those three programs and teams are heading in the right direction, having really good seasons. People are still not talking about them nearly as much as I think they deserve. And the fact that Indiana is still ranked outside the top 10 at 8-0, behind one-loss teams like Notre Dame, who lost to Northern Illinois, and teams like that. That really bothers me. They should be a top 10 team. They're 8-0. And this is Indiana. Like I said, this isn't Ohio State. I don't care how soft you think their schedule was. This is Indiana. They should be a top 10 team. But let's go ahead and get to finish off the show with my Week 10 college football picks. And then after that, I'll get to my Week 9 NFL picks. We're going to start off with the biggest game of the weekend. This is the Fox Big Noon kickoff game. That is number 4 Ohio State at number 3 Penn State. And Ohio State is currently a 3.5-point favorite in this game. Now, both these teams struggled last week with conference opponents. Ohio State struggled mightily at home against Nebraska. Ohio State is without their left tackle. He is out for the year. And their other left tackle that they started last week, who kind of struggled as well, got injured, and it looks like he's not going to be in this game. So it looks like they're going to have to move their left guard to left tackle. That's going to be an issue because when their left tackle went out, they have not been able to run the ball consistently. And they have 2 running backs that are going to be playing in the NFL next year, in Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson. So there's no excuse for them to not be able to run the football outside of they don't have good enough offensive line play. And that is a huge issue because this Penn State team, I thought they'd be better against the pass with guys like Abdul Carter and I'm blanking out, and Sutton. Dennis Sutton on the other side. Now, Dennis Sutton missed last week's game against Wisconsin, is questionable for this game, but they're still really stout along the defensive line. Not as great as getting after the passer as I thought they would be, but they're very, very stout against the run. One of the best run-stopping teams, not just in the Big Ten, but the whole country, is Penn State. And if Ohio State's going to struggle to run the football and Penn State can stop the run, that's going to be a huge mismatch there. And if you're going to make this Ohio State team one-dimensional, yes, they have great wide receiver talent in guys like Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, and Will Howard has shown that he is plenty good enough to distribute the ball to those guys. But if you're going to go into this game one-dimensional, on the road, with that crowd, still with good pass rushers in Carter and if Sutton plays, that's going to be a tall task for Ohio State to get this victory. Penn State on the offensive side, question mark at the quarterback position. Drew Aller got hurt last week. He's questionable for this game. Their backup actually came in and played really well and actually probably fits their new coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki's system better because of what he did with Jalen Daniels at Kansas these last couple of years, and Jason Bean as well. But I still think Drew Aller gives them the best chance of victory in this game. But either way, I think they'll be fine at the quarterback position. They run the ball really well. They have 2 guys who will be playing in the NFL one day as well at the running back position in Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. They have Tyler Warren at the tight end position, who's one of the most versatile players in the entire country. I like Penn State in this game. I don't know why they're a 3.5-point dog. I guess it's just brands and the fact that they haven't beat Ohio State since, I think, 2016 or 2017. But either way, give me Penn State to win. Penn State plus 3.5. I think they win the game outright as well. Is the play there? Penn State plus 3.5. And then we'll stay in the Big Ten, and this is the 3:30 game on CBS, and that is number 1 Oregon at Michigan, and Oregon is a 14.5-point favorite in this game. I don't think anybody thought we'd be saying that before the season. Michigan was coming off the national championship, of course, at home, a 14.5-point dog. But this Oregon team is the best team in the country, in my opinion. They just play sound football. On the offensive side, they can hurt you in so many ways. They can run the ball really well with James at the running back position. Dylan Gabriel can distribute it to Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, tight ends, other wide receivers, gets the ball all over the place. Super explosive on the defensive end. And the secret about Oregon is they can be as physical as any other team in the Big Ten. They're not afraid of that fight, maybe unlike other teams that came from the Pac-12, unfortunately. They're not afraid of that fight. They'll take it to anybody else. They can be just as physical as Michigan, and I think that's what's going to really hurt Michigan is the games that Michigan has been able to win. They've been able to just out-physical and out-man these teams on the offensive, defensive line. They're not going to be able to do that to Oregon, and they still are struggling at the quarterback position. Jack Tuttle actually retired this week, so it's still between Alex Orji and Davis Warren, and neither one of them have played great in those games, at least throwing the football. So I like Oregon to win, and I think they cover 2. Give me Oregon minus 14.5. I think they hammer Michigan in this game. Just an absolute mismatch, I think, in this game. And then we have Louisville at 11 Clemson, and Clemson is currently a 10.5-point favorite in this game. Now, Clemson is a team that's quietly just kept winning ever since their opening loss against Georgia. Cade Klubnik, I think, is a dark horse Heisman contender at this point. He's been playing really well. Their defense has been playing really well, like they always do under Dabo Swinney. They're running the ball well. But this Louisville team, they're very explosive on the offensive side with Tyler Shuck and those wide receivers that they have. And they just seem to find a way to hang around in these games. They hung around against Notre Dame on the road. They hung around at home against Miami. I think they hang around in this game against Clemson. Clemson gets the victory, but I think Louisville hangs around enough. So give me Louisville plus 10.5 in this game. Clemson wins, Louisville covers is how I think that game goes there. We'll stay in the ACC, and 2 teams, especially one, that are very surprising so far. And we have number 18 Pitt at number 20 SMU, and SMU is a 7.5-point favorite in this game. Pitt is an 8-0 football team, and I don't think any of us thought that would happen. Pitt is an 8-0 football team, and they're a 7.5-point dog. Now, their quarterback, who's had a pretty darn good season in Eli Holstein, he's kind of banged up and a little bit questionable going into this game. That could really change things for this game. SMU, explosive offense. Defense is hit and miss a little bit. Runs the ball well. They throw the ball well. Very explosive offense with Rhett Lashley at the helm there, or as the coach there. So this is going to be an interesting game because whoever loses this game is probably out of it in the ACC, even though that only gives Pitt 1 loss and SMU only 1 loss in the conference. But with what Miami and Clemson are doing, you're probably going to have to try to get to undefeated. Pitt has Clemson in a couple of weeks, so they have that to look forward to. This is the biggest game left on SMU's schedule. If SMU can get out of this game with a victory, they could be in the driver's seat to maybe get to the ACC championship game, depending on what happens with Miami and Clemson. Tiebreaker scenario is kind of weird, so I won't get into that here. But I think this is going to be similar to Clemson and Louisville. I think Pitt keeps this close with their offense. SMU wins the game at home, but does not cover. So give me Pitt plus 7.5 in this game. And then we'll go ahead and finish out my Week 10 college football picks in the SEC. And this is a morning game, I believe, on either ESPN or ABC. And that is number 19 Ole Miss at Arkansas. And Ole Miss is a 7-point favorite in this game. Now, Ole Miss has been disappointing so far this year, in my opinion. That home loss to Kentucky was inexcusable. Losing on the road at night to LSU was not an excusable loss, but they controlled that game the entire time and gave it up at the end and lost in overtime. So that was a little bit hard there. For Ole Miss, this is everything for them. If they have any chances to get into the SEC title, chances are probably out the window, but if they have any hope or any chance to get in the college football playoff, they need to win this game. Arkansas is a team that is playing with house money at this time. No one thought they'd be playing this well this far into the season. Sam Pittman's probably already saved his job, but they're a tough team to play at home. It's a little bit tougher at night, but still in the morning, still a tough team to play in Fayetteville there. I still like what they're doing at the quarterback position with Taylor Green. Their defense can play pretty stout at times as well. I think this is another game that's going to end like the other two. It's going to be closer than the experts think. Give me Ole Miss wins this game, but close. Give me Arkansas to cover. Arkansas +7 is the play there for me. So that'll be my final pick in college football. We'll go ahead and move to the NFL on my Week 9 NFL picks. We'll start with the Broncos at the Ravens, and the Ravens are currently a 9.5-point favorite in this game. That's a lot of points in the NFL. Now, I know the Ravens are coming back home. They play a little bit better at home outside of the loss to the Raiders, of course, in Week 2. But this Broncos team, they're a 5-2 team. They're playing really well. They're playing with confidence. Bo Nix is playing with confidence at probably his best week. I know it was against the Panthers, but probably had his best week statistically last week at home against the Carolina Panthers. And this Ravens team, like I said, their defense, I just don't trust. And with that kind of defense and the points that they give up on the defensive end, 9.5 points is just too many for me. Give me the Broncos plus 9.5 in this game to cover. I think the Ravens win, but I think the Broncos cover. And then we'll move to a game that I think is one of the better games of the weekend, and that is the Bears at the Cardinals, and the Cardinals are currently a 1.5-point favorite in this game. Now, the question for Chicago is, how do you respond after that loss on the road at Washington? You felt like you stole a victory there. You were outplayed for most of the game. You take the lead at the end. You felt like you stole a victory there, and then Washington steals it right back with that Hail Mary. How does Chicago respond? And then you have a team like Arizona, back-to-back victories on the road. Last week they won at Miami. This is a team that really hasn't handled success very well and has been a very inconsistent up and down team. So that's another question mark as well. I just think the Chicago Bears team, I think their offense will click a little bit better. The Arizona defense is nothing to write home about. And I think this Bears defense will make things uncomfortable for Kyler Murray. So give me the Bears to cover in this game, Bears plus 1.5. And then, of course, I think they win outright as well. And then we'll move to the game of the weekend, and that's in the NFC North, and that is the Lions at the Packers, and the Lions are currently a 3.5-point favorite in this game. Now, a big question is the health of Jordan Love, because if Jordan Love is healthy, I think the Packers absolutely have a huge chance to win this game. If it's Malik Willis, even though he's played well this year, I don't love their chances in this game, so that's tough there. He's kind of a game-time decision. But as I talked about both of these teams in my power rankings, both playing really well, both top 5 teams in my power rankings, both top 5 teams in the NFL, in my opinion. I just like what the Detroit Lions are doing even better. They have developed a really good culture there under Dan Campbell, and the uncertainty with Jordan Love at the quarterback position is the reason why I'm going to go ahead and roll with the Lions minus 3.5 to win and cover even in Lambeau against the Packers. And then we have the Rams at the Seahawks, and the Rams are currently a 1.5-point favorite. This Rams team, I think, is ready to ascend. You got Cooper Kupp back. You got Puka Nacua back. Stafford played really well last week. They ran the ball really well with Kyron Williams. Their defensive line is getting better and better each week with young guys like Jared Verse and Braden Fisk. So this is the team I think is looking to ascend. And the division is ripe for the taking for them. So I like this Rams team a lot. The Seattle team is kind of reeling a little bit as well. Geno Smith has not played well in back-to-back weeks for a while now. So I think this Rams team goes into Seattle. They're familiar with the venue. They're not going to be intimidated by the environment. Gets a victory, covers. Give me Rams minus 1.5 in this game. And then we'll finish out my picks with the Monday night game, and that is the Buccaneers at the Chiefs. And the Chiefs are currently a 9-point favorite in this game. Buccaneers, of course, are banged up. Chris Godwin's out for the year. Mike Evans is going to miss this game as well. Bucky Irving is running the ball really well for them, though, so I like that option for them at the running back position. We talked about the Chiefs in my power rankings. They're just a sound football team. They do turn the ball over. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is good for 1 and sometimes 2 interceptions a game this year, which has kind of been surprising, but they still find ways to get victories. I think they find a way to get a victory here. But what this Kansas City Chiefs team doesn't do, and what they haven't done for a while now, is blow out teams. They don't blow out teams. That's why I think that 9 number is a little too high for me. So I think the Bucs can cover. Give me the Chiefs to win, but Bucs plus 9 is the pick there. The Chiefs just don't blow out teams. Last week they let the Raiders get a backdoor cover. They've let other teams get backdoor covers. So I think that same situation can happen here on Monday night. So give me the Bucs plus 9. That has been my picks. That has been my show. This is Sports Talk on a Budget. Please like and subscribe on the YouTube channel right down here. Leave a comment with some of your picks of the week. Love to see those as well. If you prefer the audio version, it is available on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. Thank you again for always watching and listening, and have a great day.